Get started. So if you would find a seat next to a name placard, that would be great. We'd really appreciate that. We have a number of people who are on the way and who have either text or emailed me and said that they'll be here shortly. So we'll have more people joining us in just a minute. We also have students from the Skills Center that you can see over here that'll also be doing some videotaping. And this is also being videotaped and recorded as well as a public document. So for those of you that are elected officials and want public record of this, we have that available at the end, so that should just work out fine. Well, good morning. My name is Gene Sherritt, and I co-chair the Alliance with John Altman, and John is the Senior Policy Advisor for Governor Inslee is with us this morning. So we'll go around the room in just a minute, and John will have a chance to say a few words and welcome everybody as well. The Alliance was started in 2014 through a grant from the National Governors Association. At that time, I was the executive director of the Student Achievement Council, and we wanted to close the gap between identified jobs in the STEM area and educational and training institutions responsible for training and education. We realized at that time we had over 700,000 jobs coming into Washington, and we didn't have a skilled and educated workforce to close that gap. So over the last 4 or 5 years, thanks to so many of you in this room, we've been able to substantially close that gap. Not completely, of course. We have a lot of work still to be done. And the work that we do on the Alliance is to advise Governor Inslee on how best we can do that work, from legislative proposals to budgets to those kinds of efforts. So in the room, as we go around and everybody introduces themselves on the Alliance, you'll see that we have a very prestigious group in the room today who have been largely responsible for the success of our programs going forward. In addition to those of you in the room, we have 8 people that are connected via Zoom, and so that's all coming into us as well. So later on today, they'll introduce themselves and have a chance to ask questions and participate in it as well. Some of you have asked about the Confluence Tech Center here. This was built in 2004 as a result of the combination of work between Chelan PUD, ports, and economic trade development at that time. And it was designed really to be a critical attractor to develop a skilled and educated workforce in our community. We thought at the time that, and the Educational Service District was part of that, we thought at the time that if we could attract industry and business into the area, the thing that would be most critical to them would be a skilled and educated workforce. And so the community came together as well as the state, built this center, and we're quite proud of it. It's beautiful. The top floor and the basement are occupied by data center, and was formerly Japan Yahoo, and now it's ACTAPIO, Cato, and so they're on both the top floor and the basement. Chelan PUD occupies with them part of the second floor and the basement, and this bottom floor is training for the community. So it's used on a regular basis for employers and businesses to come and provide a training organization. So I just want to give a shout out to Chelan PUD and the port and others in the community that were a major part of that, and to North Central ESD as a major player for that. So beautiful facility. If you've not been here before, it's just a lovely place, and it's very active in our community as well. A couple of other really quick things for you. Microphones. You'll see right in front of you, and there's a little button at the bottom, and the green light will come on. So in a minute, I'm going to have each of you introduce yourselves. And so if you'll touch that button, that green light will come on, you'll be fine. You might want to shut it off if you're having conversation with your neighbor, because it is being recorded. And so you might want to say, oh, I want to say something about that presentation, so I think I'll shut my mic off right now and do that. So anyway, please use the mics if you can, because they're very sensitive and they pick up paper rustling and all that kind of stuff. So if you're not going to speak, then go ahead and just turn that mic off there. If you'll take a look at your packet very quickly, we have a really, really nice agenda today. We're really quite proud of the work that the planning team did on this, and I'll introduce those members to you a little bit later. But we're going to start off with Dr. Michelle Price in just a moment, who will introduce the presidents of Wenatchee Valley College and Big Bend Community College. And we're very lucky in our area, or 4-county area of Chelan, Douglas, Grant, and Okanagan, to have 2 outstanding community colleges and 2 outstanding presidents. So they've been very active and very supportive in workforce development here. And that will be followed by Dr. Schultz. Thank you so much for being here this morning. We really appreciate it very much. And I've had a chance to hear Dr. Schultz speak before, and we're really excited about your presentation. So thank you for taking the time to be here with us this morning. The patio cafe, which some of you saw is out here to the door and to the left, that's where we'll have lunch and coffee break, and everything is set up out there for you. So we'll break at that time. We're going to start and end it right out on the times that are indicated on the agenda, so we can move forward. After the break, John Altman will talk to us a little bit about some of the work that's going on with the governor's office regarding our work, and then we'll roll right into our tree fruit presentations. And we have a very star-studded cast of presenters with us this morning, and it's very exciting to hear the work they're doing in agriculture in our area. And I think you're going to be very impressed and very pleased with the work that's going on in not just this area, but across the state in our ag community. That'll be followed by Sue Kane, Dr. Kane, who will talk a little bit about what she heard. Also, we're going to have students from Cooley Heartline Elmira, called the Galactic Farmers here, and they've been involved in coding around agricultural products, and they are a really fun group of students. I think you'll enjoy them a little bit later. After lunch, we'll roll into our computer science work, and then we're going to have a wonderful presentation from Dennis, Brandon, Amy, and Susan around some of the work that they're doing with Career Connect Washington and some of the work to get students involved in that. And then Karina is going to talk to us a little bit about the MESA program, and we'll have a little break after that. And then we're going to have a really nice presentation from Kurt Hudson and Gary Ivory on some of the work that's going on hydro in our area and hydro generation and our partnerships we have with Microsoft and others in that area, as well as the PUD Hydrogen Production Initiative, which is a new initiative in our area. Then we have 3 legislators on a panel after that. And then this afternoon, we have tours, Rocky Reach, and there's a sign-up sheet out front. If you haven't signed up and you'd like to go, please do so. We have to get that to Chelan PUD this morning. So if you're going to do one of the tours, please let us know. Stemilt, if you haven't seen the Fresh Cube, that's amazing. It's all about robotics. And the only human touch on the product there at Stemilt is when the forklift driver brings the product to the conveyor belt, and then when the forklift driver takes it to the truck. In between, all robotics, all technology, all about coding. Really fascinating. So I think you're going to enjoy that as well. And both of those tours are just simply outstanding. And then finally, we have a Science in a Seminar series that occurs every Wednesday in our valley. That's in your packet as well, and that will take place in this room here this afternoon with Dr. Vincent Jones. Final page on the back, just as the planning team. And I was going to do it a little bit later, but I'm going to do it right now. Jim Macpherson, Sue Kane, Karina, Kurt, Dennis, Michelle, Linda, and Debbie, would you stand for a second so we can say thank you? There are a couple of them in the room right here. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Can we say thank you for a really nice job on putting it together? So with that, I think we'll roll into the program. If you haven't had a chance, please look in your packet. We have a lot of associated articles with the presenters, and they're in order of the presentations, including their bios. So please take some time to do that as well. So I'm going to start. Dr. Schultz, would you introduce yourself? And we'll go next to Scott, and we'll go right around the Alliance members here, okay?
Yes, good morning. You're going to hear all about me, but I'm Noel Schultz. I'm at WSU Pullman. I'm a faculty member in electrical engineering, and I'm lucky also to be the First Lady of WSU.
Well, good morning. I'm Scott Friedman from the Association of Washington School Principals, and I'm interested to even know what you just talked about right there. So glad that I am here to represent the Principals Association and also our learning centers that are located both in Cispus and Chewila Peak around the state. As we look to further our mission with the STEM education at both those locations, and then develop and facilitate principal leadership around STEM education across the state as well.
Thanks, Scott.
Good morning. My name is Jeff Estes, and I'm on the Washington State Board of Education. I'm in my 2nd term as a gubernatorial appointee. I live down in Richland. It's fair to say that I'm a strong advocate for STEM education on the board. Randy, I think he'll nod in regard to that.
Hi, I'm Sue Kane. I'm the Director for STEM Initiatives and Strategic Partnerships for the North Central Education Service District. I also get to tell you a little bit today about a few of the hats with the Apple STEM Network and the Career Connect Washington Network for the North Central Washington region. So more to come on that.
Hi, everybody. I'm Deidre Holmberg. I represent STEM Core Consultants in Tri-Cities, Washington. We're a small but fierce STEM education consultation firm.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Evangelina Galvan-Shreve, and I am the Director of STEM Education for Pacific Northwest National Laboratory, managed by Patel.
Good morning. Thank you. Good morning. I'm Arlene Crum, Director of Mathematics at the Office of the Superintendent of Public Instruction. Happy here to represent math and the other SCNP as well.
You can hear me. Thanks, turn it off. It's all good.
Wonderful, thanks, Neil.
Oh, it worked. I'm Kimber Connors. I'm the Executive Director for the Washington State Opportunity Scholarship.
Good morning. I'm Randy Spalding with the Executive Director with the State Board of Education.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Lisa Brown. I'm the Director of the Department of Commerce, and previous to that in the state legislature, helped out with the Chihuahua Peak Learning Center and Chancellor at WSU Spokane, our health sciences.
And good morning, my name is Andy Smith, and I'm the Executive Director of
Daryl Monair, Associate Director for Research at the Washington Student Achievement Council, filling in for our Executive Director, Michael Miati.
Ellen Matheny, I'm staff at the Washington Student Achievement Council. We have been tasked to manage the STEM Alliance on behalf of the Governor's Office, and I hold with great humility that position.
Good morning. I'm John Altman, Governor Inslee's Policy Advisor for Higher Ed and Workforce, STEM Education. The Governor would be here today, but he is at Fife High School this afternoon, and Fife High School is being recognized by ESPN for Special Olympics Award. So that will be a pretty major broadcast that comes out of there at the state of Washington. And we really appreciate all the advice that you and talent you bring to this, because a lot of the decisions the governor is looking at come from the being out, seeing what's going on, and then looking for the solutions that are both policy and funding. And I'm going to talk a little bit later about the budget later on. But thank you for being here.
Thanks, John.
Good morning. I'm Catherine Kurtz, the Executive Director of the Pacific Education Institute, and we do natural resource education across the state. And currently, we have the Project Climb Time, which you all helped us get the legislative support for the Climate Science Initiative. And in next week in Ellensburg, we have a regenerative ag workshop for high school and CTE teachers. We have carbon and working forest workshops going across the state. We have food waste workshops going across the state, all related to that. So a lot of exciting things. Yeah.
Wade Larson with Wagstaff Incorporated over in Spokane, and our emphasis is working through career connected education and also with K-12s and community colleges to really work together with the local businesses to group together and develop tomorrow's workforce.
Good morning. I'm Dana Riley Black. I'm Assistant Superintendent at Everett Public Schools for Curriculum Assessment and Career Connected Learning.
Good morning. I'm Val Senatori, Provost at the Community College of Spokane as of July, and wondering what took me so long to get to Washington. Here today on behalf of Chancellor.
Very good. Karina? Very good. Thank you very much. Before I forget, the Wi-Fi is CTC guest, so just have to go right on there and be fine. I get a chance to introduce Dr. Price right now, who's a colleague and a great friend. Michelle's superintendent of North Central Educational Service District. She has her doctorate in school administration from Washington State University. She has her master's degree from Central, and this is her 32nd year in education. She was superintendent of Moses Lake School District prior to coming here, and she was instrumental in the development of the Columbia Basin Technical Skills Center and she's a great friend and a great colleague, Michelle Price.
Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to Wenatchee. We ordered some sunshine for you today. It's coming slowly. Really, it's coming though. So I'd like to give you the warmest of welcome to Wenatchee. And I can't help but take a moment to say that the educational service districts across the state, there are 9 of us, play a critical role in delivering regional services to students across the state. We're able to deploy people and to resources out to our rural communities so that no child, regardless of their zip code, doesn't have the access or opportunities that you're working on in STEM education in particular. So we happen to be partners with implementing TEALS programs or the TEALS model across our region, as well as career-connected learning and many other supports for our school districts. We serve 29 school districts from Oroville to Warden, and including Stehekin, our smallest school district in the state. In this ever-changing and increasing complex world, we just need to make sure that more than ever that all kids have access. So I appreciate the work that you're doing here today, and that will lead to better things for all kids. I have the distinctive pleasure to introduce to you today Dr. Jim Richardson, the president of Wenatchee Valley College. So Dr. Richardson comes to us in Wenatchee here in 2005 as our president. He came from West Burlington, Iowa, where he was the president of Southeastern Community College. He has served in higher education 41 years. So it is a pleasure to have you here today, Dr. Richardson. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. And, I got the agenda after I talked to you, Jean, and you had told me I had an hour. Is the agenda wrong or am I wrong? I also want to welcome you and to North Central Washington. Our district is 10,000 square miles, not as big as yours, and probably not as big as Spokane's, but mostly rural. Wenatchee is our big city. Our second campus is in Omak, and that is 100 miles away. So we do a lot of distance learning. We do a lot of sharing. Our district goes all the way up to Winthrop, and we also offer classes in Nispelem on the reservation. So our district is huge, and that brings in a lot of complications as far as how do we get to everybody, especially because, as you probably know, Wi-Fi and just connection in some of those areas is not very good. And so we struggle with that all the time. So I appreciate the work that all of you are doing in the state to bring those types of things to us. Now I have to, she told you how old I was, so I'm going to go right with it. I have a couple things I want to tell you about our college. First of all, community colleges are probably different than you thought of even 10 years ago, because we have gone different directions, including bachelor's degrees now. And so we are looking at a whole different, I guess, way of doing things. As far as STEM goes, I want to tell you a little bit about our college and STEM. First of all, Karina is our MESA director, which is a great support for STEM students in our district. We are a Hispanic serving institution, and we have 56% of our students are minority. So a program like that is definitely important in our college, but also in this area. We also have a camp program for migrant students, migrant family students, and that program is also STEM, as a STEM orientation. And we just got renewed, the only one in Washington that got renewed, for another 5 years of that. And so we just finished our 10th year and are going into 15. So some things that we have done lately that kind of change us now when you talk about community colleges. One is we're just introducing, we have it all set up, a Bachelor of Applied Science and Data Analytics. Now, if you talk about pathways, just at our school, if you don't even go somewhere else, you can start in pre-math and go all the way up. Now, data analytics, as you probably know, is very math intensive. It really is almost an applied math degree. And what we did is we went out to our communities, and some of you will see the dam this afternoon, but the hydropower, we worked with our agriculture community that Jean talked about. We've worked with our healthcare community, and that is the type of worker that they need. And so we, as a community college, still are doing our mission by supplying workforce that our region needs. We're not going outside of our region and saying, what do we need in Seattle? We're doing other things. A couple other things that we're doing. We have a BS also in engineering technology, and we have several pathways, both through our transfer degree, but also through an engineering technology 2-year degree and some other 2-year degrees that are there, including electronics. Our first bachelor's degree was our Bachelor of Science in Nursing. And in this area, we are the regional healthcare area for this area. Confluence Health is the biggest user of that. And they really came to us and said, we can't get bachelor's degree prepared nurses to come to Wenatchee and to come to Confluence. And so we worked with them to provide that program. We already provide more than 80% of their RNs. So now we are preparing the RN to BSN to get them to the level that they need to be. And as Sue knows very well, we do undergraduate research. Most of our undergraduate research is done in biology. Biology we have in several other areas, but we have, matter of fact, we just had, I think for maybe the 3rd year in a row, one of our undergraduate research students has won the GWADA Award for STEM education champion. I'm looking at Jenny for the correct term. So we're doing a great job there preparing our students at our college to go on to those 4-year opportunities. And I'm probably taking my 2 hours now, so I will cede my spot up here to another community college president. And I know you're going to introduce him. I just want to introduce his district. They call it Big Bend Community College. We call it Wenatchee Valley College East.
Well, Jim, I have to tell you, North Central ESDs, or my personal claim to fame, is that upon coming to Wenatchee and to the ESD, we were able to have North Central ESD become the host for Apple STEM. And so we provide that backbone for the region's collective work to support expansion and growth of STEM education and opportunities. And my biggest claim to fame with that is that I hired Sue Kane away from Jim. Woo! So, it's also my pleasure today to introduce to you Dr. Terry Lees. So Dr. Terry Lees is the president of Big Bend Community College. He's been there since 2012. He came to Big Bend by way of Riverland Community College in Minnesota, where he was the president there since 2003. He actually has a law background, which makes him a very fascinating person to visit with. I also have to tell you that Dr. Lees has announced his retirement at the end of his contract year this year. So would you please join me in welcoming him to the stand here, but also in congratulating him on his future endeavors. So Dr. Lees, congratulations.
Thank you, Michelle, and good morning, everybody. So Big Bend Community College is sometimes we're the smallest community college in our 34 college district system. Sometimes other colleges edge us out for that dubious honor or distinction. We're not as large as Spokane and Wenatchee Valley. Our service district is only about 4,600 square miles and includes Grant, Adams counties, as well as the Odessa School District in Lincoln County. What I think is really distinctive about our service district is that we have, if not the lowest, among the lowest per capita household incomes, lowest levels of educational attainment in our state. And so that'll give you some perspective for some of the work that we're doing. First, I thank you for your service to our state, our education system, and the students that we serve. Your strategic work is going to continue to ensure that Washington is well positioned as a leader in STEM-related economic sectors. And this, as I look at the list of members of this alliance, I see a wonderful mix of private and public entities. And it's public-private partnerships like this alliance that provide the best outcomes for the most people by incorporating the benefits of the diverse interests and experiences and perspectives that you bring. So thank you for that. At Big Bend, we depend on public-private partnerships to develop and deliver STEM education programs that meet the needs of our local and state economies. One example is we have a National Science Foundation grant to support the development of an agricultural mechanics program. And this program includes diesel technology. And not only is that important to the ag sector of our local economy, which, you know, ag is the largest economic sector or subsector, but also the trucking industry. And so we're able to provide a program where students can come in, get the fundamentals of diesel technology, and then branch off and specialize in either ag or transportation. We're collaborating with the Moses Lake School District, Columbia Basin Tech Skills Center to build an aviation-related pathway from middle school to college. I'm pleased that next fall, Columbia Basin Tech, with our cooperation, will launch an aviation maintenance technician program. And we see potential growth areas in STEM-related sectors like engineering, mechatronics, and advanced manufacturing. Another partnership is the Columbia Basin Manufacturing Workforce Pipeline, and this includes upskilling opportunities via a manufacturing-focused adult high school diploma. I don't know if you remember when you were in 8th grade and you had to take algebra and you thought to yourself, why am I taking this? When am I ever going to use this for? So what we're finding is that in these career pathways, if we can do contextualized education and you're using the math in the context of what you have a passion for, it makes a lot more sense, and learning is really accelerated, much more relevant. So we're excited about that high school diploma program for adults, and then also a leadership skills certificate program that will help people in manufacturing settings move from being a technical person to also being a lead or a manager supervisor. We're working with various school districts and employers to develop or expand our programs in unmanned aerial systems. Ours is focused primarily on ag-related, but we've been branching off into some other areas with like law enforcement, mechatronics, automation, and robotics, and our medical simulation training program. One of the things that I think people are noticing is that Boeing is having a greater presence in Moses Lake. We have the former Larson Air Force Base and that huge runway and the airport there. There's lots of room, acreage in which to store planes that are awaiting authorization to fly again. And I'm thinking it's around 4 planes a day that are coming into Moses Lake, and then they're getting parked around the airport. most of these planes have already been sold, so they're painted in the colors and the logos of the various airlines to which they've been sold. And it is the most colorful. If you haven't seen it, you need to go by and see that. It's the most colorful enhancement to our sage landscape, which is pretty dull. So anyhow, Boeing, I think, has over 100 planes in Moses Lake now. We have the capacity, I think, to take up to at least 300. And if that's what they need. They are, in the midst of hiring people with technical skills because those planes have to be maintained in order to be returned to service. And so as you can imagine, our aviation maintenance technician program is full. And for those of you that don't know, Big Bend has not only an aviation maintenance technician program, it's also the only one that has FAA approval to operate as a competency-based model. In most of the programs that are authorized by the FAA, it's seat time, hours. You have to work for hours. But our program is set up that if you come, say, from the military and you have a background in aviation maintenance and you can pick it up a lot faster, then why should you spend hours doing that? You can get that satisfied, meet the FAA requirements, and then move on to other parts of the curriculum. And so, and then we have a flight commercial pilot program is the largest collegiate program in the Pacific Northwest. And you may have heard recently that Boeing gave the college a gift of $100,000 for those programs. And I'd like to end on something, go back to my earlier comments about the demographics. Like Wenatchee Valley College, we're a Hispanic serving institution. About 43% of our service district is Hispanic, Latinx. Our student population is right around 42-43%, so we're proud that we're able to be, serving representatively of the group that makes up our service district. So we have a computer data center training program that we developed in partnership with the data centers in the Quincy area. And what's interesting about that program is that the data center managers were complaining that they couldn't keep technicians. And what was happening was they were hiring technicians with baccalaureate preparation, which was way more than they needed to work in a warehouse. So they'd come to Quincy and they were bored professionally, and then because they came from outside the area, a lot of them didn't stay. They just didn't want to live in Quincy or Grant County. So when we heard about that, we approached them with the idea that maybe we could help you customize a program that would prepare employees for the kind of work that you do at these data centers, and then we can grow our own, and the employees that come to you are of the area. And so it's been a tremendous success. Something that's unprecedented for computer science in our experience is that our fall class is full, and 65% of the students are Hispanic. 35% are female. That's the highest percentage ever in computer science program. And historically, these classes had never filled before. And we've even started a wait list for our winter quarter. So the key is working together, these public-private partnerships. We couldn't do it without the advice and guidance of the data center plant managers. And they weren't able to do it on their own because they do data centers. They don't necessarily do training and education. So it's been a really good partnership. And again, I thank all of you, regardless of which sector you represent, for being here today, for the work that you do on behalf of the Alliance and behalf of the people of Washington. Thank you.
You bet. Thanks, you guys from the Skills Center, for being here. We appreciate it very, very much. I get a chance to introduce Jim Macpherson. Dr. Macpherson is now retired from his previous position as the director of the WSU Tree Fruit Research and Extension Center here in Wenatchee, Washington. Prior to that, he served as manager of the Washington Tree Fruit Research Commission. He holds a PhD in plant breeding and genetics from the University of Wisconsin-Madison and has led research programs in plant breeding, horticultural management of vegetables and tree fruits in the public and private sector. And Jim will introduce our keynote speaker. Jim?
Thanks, Gene, and thanks, Michelle. Thanks to the Planning Committee for putting this thing together. I want to thank the group for allowing me to introduce Noel. It's really a pleasure, but honestly, it's welcome back. Noel has been here before, and her presence says a lot. It's been inspiring to our graduate students when you had a memorable seminar with them, 2 years ago or whatever. But Noel really walks the talk. So I'm excited to hear her story today, and that's really going to provide the background. You'll see that she's energetic, articulate, and fun. She gives a great talk, and her commitment to STEM is obvious. But we really do have to recognize that she is the Edmund O. Schweitzer II Chair in Power Apparatus and Systems at WSU. Over her career, she's graduated 45 master's, 13 PhD students, nearly 200 publications, book chapters, $40 million in external funding, NSF Career Award. She's an accomplished scientist and engineer. In fact, she was a fellow of the International Electrical and Electronics Engineers Society, 2014, the Harriet B. Regas Award, for something outstanding in that area, I'm sure. She's a member of the Power and Energy Society, the governing board for 12 years, its president from 2012 to 2013. Importantly to this group, she's a WSU system representative to the Washington STEM Board and co-chair of the Governor's Choose Washington NMA Council. She's going to go through her story, which again is very inspiring, and I hope she's going to talk about Tim and Andrew, her children, and more importantly, her 2 corgis, which I know are precious to Noel. So you're in for a treat now. I really want to welcome Noel Schultz for a keynote presentation.
No pressure from Gene and Jim. Thank you. So now the biggest part is getting the technology going. I should be able to click. Great. Oh, you can't see it. This blank screen. Oh, there we go. Takes a little time. So good morning. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. And I want to talk a little bit about research, innovation, and the future of Washington State. And I feel a little bit like I'm preaching to the choir here as I talk about these topics, but it really is an honor to be here. One of the things I think is important as I give talks is to give you a little background on where I came from and my family and things like that. And I think this is particularly important as we talk about careers in STEM, because sometimes people think you can't have a family and a career in STEM, and I'm here to say you can have that. So this is my family, my 2 sons, Andrew and Kirk. Kirk's my husband, Andrew and Tim. And my husband, Kirk, is president of WSU, but also a chemical engineer by training. And then our 2 sons went into STEM fields. So Tim is in computer science, and his wife is also a computer scientist. And then Andrew is working on his PhD. And Andrew actually got an undergraduate degree in math and mechanical engineering. So he brought up the M part of the STEM in the family. So that's a little bit about our family. And this is our start of our 4th year here in the state of Washington. The other thing I wanted to mention, and for those of you that have lived in Washington all your life, we're very fortunate to have a very progressive perspective in a lot of areas in Washington that you don't see across the whole country, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. So just a little bit of an outline. I'm going to talk a little bit about my family, which I did, and my background, then talk about STEM and why the state of Washington should worry about STEM. Talk about some WSU examples as things that we can do from pre-K to 12, undergraduate, graduate innovation and research. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about the food, energy, and water nexus, because I think it's particularly relevant in this region right now, but in general across the state of Washington and some of our opportunities. So first, to start off with, my mom and dad, I have to get the whole family in here. My dad had a PhD in electrical engineering. My mom was an elementary school teacher. So I came to education, engineering education, from 2 different perspectives related to that. So I grew up in Virginia and had a chance to teach at a bunch of different universities across the country, and I'll show you a map here in a little bit. My research area is electric power, working on smart grids and also renewable energy and microgrids. So I do a lot of computer modeling of the power grid so we can operate it and understand it and do some of those different activities. So I put this map, and it may be a little hard for you to see. So my dad used to joke that we couldn't keep a job because we kept moving around. But you will see our wedding picture there, and then our picture when we came to WSU. But we've had a chance, and so grew up in Virginia. Then we went to North Dakota, got my PhD at Minnesota, so we lived apart for 2 years for that. Then we were at Michigan Tech, Upper Peninsula of Michigan, 200 to 300 inches of snow a winter. Pullman is no problem. Then we moved to Mississippi. We were at Mississippi State, also a land-grant university, for 8 years. Then we were at Kansas State for 7 years, and then now enjoying our time in Pullman. So a little bit about my passion and background, and Jim mentioned part of this. So one of the things from the very beginning, I wanted to get organizations together, particularly women in STEM or women in engineering. So I started programs as a graduate student, also at different universities we've been at. I've started programs and looking at how do we create that support network for women. Because a lot of times I might have been the only woman in my class, or particularly and in labs and other cases. I worked with different organizations and started in my power group, in my power field. We used to started a group, and we had 4 to 5 people 20 years ago. We're now up to 30 people. So it's great to see that advancement. I have Helen Regas here, who was at WSU, was a leader in computer science at WSU. And I didn't find out till later that when I won the Harriet Regas Award that recognized me for working with women and STEM, that she actually had a WSU tie. So that was kind of cool. I also had a chance to be president of my professional organization in 2012 and 2013, which is 35,000 members worldwide. Got to go to conferences on 6 continents. Did not get anything in Antarctica, working on that. So, but one of my initiatives was Women in Power, which is an area of where we network and support women across power. And as Jim mentioned, I'm very fortunate to be on the Washington STEM board and also working with the Choose Washington and MA Council to try to look at how do we continue to have great aviation opportunities in the state of Washington. So that's a little bit about me and my background. Right now, my project, one of my big projects, is working with India on the next generation distribution system, looking at how do we integrate solar, wind, storage, electric vehicles into the grid, but also how do we electrify parts of India that don't have electricity. So that's kind of where I'm coming from my research background. And this is a very big project, and you can see the partners. WSU is the U.S. lead. We're working with a lot of organizations. We have some partners in Washington, including PNL, Avista, Phenomish PUD, and GE Grid Solutions. So a lot of cool things happening in the power area in the state of Washington. So why is it important for Washington to get more people into STEM? And I put from pre-K to 20. We talk a lot, and many of you are involved in the K through 12 arena. And I think that's really important. Obviously, that's our pipeline. But I think we need to remember the 13 to 20 point. And I'm going to talk a little bit about opportunities related to P&L, but also as we look at industry across the state, master's and PhD prepared professionals are also part of the STEM community. And we focus a lot on getting students into undergrad, but we want to make sure we continue to work in the space beyond undergrad. So there are three reasons that I give that I think we have. One is the numbers. When we look at the numbers, the second is global competition, and the third is diversity of thought and experiences. So these are some reasons why I think this is important. So this may be a little bit hard to read with this venue, but these slides will be available if anybody is interested in some of the numbers and some of the references. But if you look at this, this basically talks about the openings. When we look towards 2022, how many projected openings are we going to have in all these different fields? And all of these are STEM-related fields related to different opportunities that we're going to have. So you can see there are a lot of opportunities, as was mentioned earlier, as this alliance was developed. It's because we're going to have these jobs, and we want to make sure we have the workforce there. This one I think is particularly interesting in the STEM fields, and basically we have an aging STEM workforce. There are a lot of people that got into STEM in a time frame that now they're getting close to retirement. And I'm not really happy that the oldest area is 51 and over, so I'm in that area now. But what we see basically is we see a large number. You can see over a third, and in some areas it can be higher, of the workforce could retire in the next 5 to 10 years. So how do we make sure we're filling that not only, we talk a lot about new jobs as we talk about STEM, but they're also replacing those that are retiring or getting out of the area. So the numbers are there. When we talk about the state of Washington, and this data is from Washington STEM, one of our challenges as we look at all the new jobs that are coming is making sure people have a credential, post-high school credential, to be able to get these jobs, particularly in the STEM areas and some of those different places where they can get jobs. And I really like, we talk about family sustaining jobs. So jobs that are there to help with income that can help the family be successful and have opportunities. So another Washington STEM fact is that 70% of the jobs will require an education beyond high school. And one of the things we continue to talk about, and the governor is very forceful, is we're talking about any kind of credential. This isn't just about 4-year or master's or PhD, but credentials to be able to find those successful jobs and things like that. And 2/3 of the jobs will require STEM skills, but we don't have enough folks. We all know in Washington we import a lot of people because we don't have the people locally. But we have the pool, but we have to get them trained in the ability and things to do. And particularly as we talk about rural youth and looking at the low-income opportunities and youth of color, to make sure they know about these opportunities and they are on track for some of that. And that's what we're talking about, is making sure we have those opportunities related for that. And I would add women as well to that area as we continue to work to make sure women are looking at STEM careers and moving forward. Global competition. As we look at this slide, one of the challenges, and this one is for undergraduates. I have a professor's voice, so I think you could probably hear me even without the mic. But if we look at this, so this is China's numbers in thousands of science and engineering degrees. This is from the National Science Board. Lots of other graphs if you're interested in some of those kind of things. But you can see basically the U.S., we have a small increase. You can even see the EU in there. But we're seeing a lot more engineers coming and scientists coming out of China. And those numbers mean in technologies, they're going to be working in those areas as well. And so innovation will be part of that. At the graduate level, the other thing we see is as we look at U.S. numbers, and this is a U.S. total, there's a large percentage that are not, that are temporary residents. So they're not necessarily going to stay in the U.S. and help with the economy here. So how do we make sure that we continue to have that expertise around the state? And then diversity of thought. And I added this because this was about 20 years ago, 21 now, I was at a conference, and William Wolf was president of the National Academy of Engineers, which is a very prestigious group, but tended to be a very male, senior, white male group. And so when he came out and talked about this, it was a really interesting statement. Realize it's 20 years ago, so the language is a little different than we would use today. But collective diversity or diversity of the group is the kind of diversity that people usually talk about. Is just as essential as good engineering as individual diversity. At the fundamental level, men, women, ethnic minorities, racial minorities, and people with handicaps experience the world differently. Those differences in experience are the gene pool from which creativity springs. And he really talks about it as we find the best solutions when we have the most diverse teams. And there are a couple examples that I give here. The first one is airbags, right? Airbags were designed to help in the safety perspective of a car. But what did they originally do? They designed a test dummy that was the average white male height. So all of a sudden, smaller men, women were dying because the airbags were not protecting them. And so there wasn't, when they first started, they didn't think about that diversity of who might be driving the car and what are the differences related to that. The other thing that's really interesting, you see right here, paying at the pump. So where did paying at the pump come from? So paying at the pump came from some, there was a focus group with some mothers, and they talked about how it was very challenging when they got gas, when they had children in the car, that they had to take the children out of the car and they had to take them inside to pay for gas. And that was where the initiative started to pay at the pump, was to provide that opportunity so you did not have to leave and that convenience. And that was because of a focus group with some mothers who wanted to keep their children safe and not have to drag them out of a car, because you don't want to have a sleeping baby take inside if you're doing that. So that's great examples of how diversity of thought really helps us in our engineering and science solutions. And we've heard about a bunch of different activities even today already that are happening in that. So when we talk about diversity and inclusion in 2019, there's so many different areas we talk about. Women and men, people with disabilities, first generation. WSU is still about a third of our students are first generation college students. So they don't necessarily have the support structure of people that have been to college before, and they need that. Different parts of the US, different parts of the world, veterans, different ages. When we talk about teams now where we can have everything from baby boomer to generation XYZ, whatever the digital groups now, they see things very differently. Urban versus rural. I'm a rural girl, so everyone asks me how I like Pullman, and I say I love Pullman. I would rather live in Pullman than Seattle. Other people may not feel that way, but I'm a rural person. But I have a different set of experiences. My traffic tolerance is very different than if you live in the Puget Sound. So those are different types of experiences and things you think of related to that. Educational backgrounds, having a variety of educational backgrounds. And people of color, different socioeconomic differences, LGBTQ+. So diversity and inclusion is in 2019 is a lot of different things as we look at that. And many of you are working in those areas. So WSU, I like to put this picture up because depending on where you are in the state of Washington, you know different things besides about our Cougar athletics. You know different things about WSU. We have 6 systems. We have 5 physical systems on our global campus. We also have, because of our land grant mission, we have extension offices in every county. And then we're also fortunate to have 4 very active research centers across, including the one here that's world-class. And so as we look at this, there's a lot of different things going around the state related to STEM and related to Washington State. And I want to use those examples as things that we need to be doing. And I loved what President Lee said earlier about the public-private partnerships. That's so important today. As we look, while Washington supports higher ed and education better than many states, we still, to be able to do things, that partnership is so important. So as we talk about WSU, and let's talk a little bit about the whole spectrum of the pipeline when we talk about universities. And I include Washington Higher Ed in this. I'm just using WSU as an example with what we have here. But we have the pipeline, right? So we're developing K through 12 teachers that are then going and working in schools to talk about STEM. We're also developing undergraduate and graduate students that are going into the workforce, either as STEM professionals or with advanced degrees. We're developing the future faculty. So not only are we doing K through 12 teachers, we're also doing 13 to 20 teachers that are working in there. We're working on STEM education projects. We're working with many of you sometimes in school districts and teachers and community college to work on different programs to help advance. We're also working on STEM technical research. You're going to hear more about that today. I'm going to talk a little bit about that, but we're working on those areas, and those are exciting stories because they tell us of how we're making a difference with STEM. You know, when I first started in talking about STEM, when we talked about STEM, we talked about biology, chemistry, math, engineering. I think we had a very narrow on what STEM was. But as I've had a chance to go around the state and go to our research centers and go to our different campuses, really STEM is everywhere. And STEM is in everything. In agriculture, lots of STEM related activities in agriculture. Engineering, the sciences, education. We need to make sure we have those secondary teachers to teach, but we also need to make sure our elementary school teachers are excited about STEM and sharing their passion related to that. Our health sciences, looking at, there was a discussion about nurses. Rural medicine is a huge challenge and opportunity for us. And how do we as a state work in that area and get kids excited about careers in either medicine, nursing, or pharmacy to help manage that? Data analytics and computer science. There's a lot of computer science in the Puget Sound, but there's a lot of computer science across the state of Washington, and there will continue to be more in that area. Vet medicine, part of our food comes from that, but also our different companion animals, lots of different aspects of that. The social sciences, how do we get people to accept renewable energy? There are people that will adopt it right off. There are people that don't want a windmill in their backyard or don't want a solar cell, or there are different things that come up with that. And then communicating, we're going to talk about communications. One of our biggest challenges with STEM is how do we communicate STEM to non-STEM audience, right? My husband, who's a chemical engineer, says, how do you tell an outgoing engineer? They look at your shoes instead of their own shoes when they talk to you, right? Engineers aren't always known for being great communicators. So that's what, we just had our career fair yesterday. I should have taken some pictures. But that's one of our challenges. Sometimes you think of someone in a white coat who can't communicate. They use acronyms. They talk at a level that your eyes roll, or because you don't really understand what they're talking. How do we communicate with that? How do we also make sure people are included? The multicultural students, women, first generation, and veterans. And then how do we make sure, one of the most important things for particularly our underrepresented groups are to make sure we have role models so that they can see people that have done what they've done and work in those areas. So let's talk about some examples and things going through. So as we talk about the pipeline, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of people don't think about STEM and even engineering in particular as a family-friendly career, right? If you, when I've done some work with middle schoolers, they think they have to pick between a STEM career and a family. They can't do both. So how do we show people opportunities to do both? Today's students want to save the world, right? We have 16-year-olds going to the United Nations. We have students walking out of class to talk about their planet and things like that. They want to save the world. How do we talk about all the things STEM does that saves the world? So they want to be part of that. How do we, first generation students may not know about opportunities in STEM. So we need to provide set up for success by exposure to these opportunities. How do we help them learn about those things? But also, how do we make sure they have the background education to be successful in working through that? So some of the programs that we have is the 4-H. There's a big emphasis in 4-H, Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, all of these organizations. And one of the things we can do, and we need to continue to do, is leverage what's already being done. There's no sense, and you all are doing a lot of that by looking at what's being done, doing pilots, and then sharing that across, and that's a great step in what we're doing. Washington STEM, the Apple STEM Network, is a great example of how we're doing things different, because every region is different in Washington, right? It's awesome to drive from Pullman to Seattle and see all the different areas that you see on that drive, as long as it's in the summer and not in the winter. But it's amazing, and you all probably don't appreciate it if you grew up in Washington. It's always been that way, but as a fairly new person, it's amazing to see the diversity that we have across the state and the different opportunities we have, whether it's in an urban area or in the rural areas, whether it's apples or cherries or wine and grape. There's so many different opportunities across the state. And one of the things that's important is it's not one size fits all. We need to be leveraging what we're doing locally. Because as was mentioned, a lot of people want to come back to where they grew up. They want to be part of that. So how do we highlight those STEM opportunities close by? And the STEM networks are working in that area, and that's very important. And Washington STEM, I'm on that board, so I found that's a lot of cool activities they're doing related to early STEM skills. We had a board meeting last week and talked about how important math skills are pre-kindergarten in predicting success and someone's ability and working with that. Computer skills, the computer requirements the state of Washington has. Career-connected learning now has its own initiative because it's so important. And really, what is part of career-connected learning is also, what are my opportunities? My mom or dad didn't do this, but can I do that? And those are important. And also looking at the numbers. Someone mentioned about your zip code and what your opportunities are, making sure we're providing opportunities there and strengthening STEM in K through 12. So I'm going to go quickly through some different activities that I think demonstrate this across our WSU system as just examples. One of these projects with the National Institute of Health relates to health education through arts-based learning. Sometimes you hear STEAM, where we talk about arts as part of STEM, and using that. And particularly for K through 12, some of those areas are good for teaching. So in this case, they're looking at mosquito habitat and taking pictures of that. And they're using a sculpture to kind of model part of the human microbiome. So how do we address the disparities that are happening, career development, the health outcomes that we see in rural areas, particularly rural minorities? How do we increase rural STEM education across and working with that? And particularly that we have folks looking at health fields and biomedical related fields. And this project partners with Central Washington Latinx communities and making sure they're exposed to some of the different opportunities. One of the other big areas, and many of you, is teacher preparation. So my mom was an elementary school teacher, and the computer was like a bad thing to her. My dad did a lot of stuff on computers, and she now sends me emojis, and the cell phone is kind of a cool thing for her. And she likes it because she can see her grandchildren on Facebook and text them and things like that. But she really didn't want to do stuff with the computers. And how do we have teachers with a wide range of experience? How do we help now that we have new science requirements, the next generation science standards? How do we help the computer science standards, the state of Washington? How do we help teachers with that and retraining and working with that? So we have several programs, and I think this is a great example of where we're working across the state at different organizations to come up with the next generation STEM teacher preparation and making sure our teachers can help our pre-service teachers be able to get that, but also look at programming that helps our current service teachers to get additional training if it's something they haven't learned about. And so this is one project where we're working on helping increase our workforce by looking at that. WSU Tri-Cities is working on computer science teacher education. How do we help provide that certification, not only for our current students, but for teachers that are out there that are interested in computer science? And how do we combine our engineering, computer science, and our education together so that we're working together on these challenges and problems? And then another project is connecting land, language, and culture, and particularly looking at our indigenous populations and having opportunities to talk about those in our different criteria, in our different classes and activities. So here we have the science curriculum modules where we're talking about languages, culture, where we're using the different seasons to talk about different parts of science and math and things like that. Things that are Native populations sharing, not only for the Native populations to see something they relate to, but helping all our students see a little bit of different cultures when they're learning about different activities. So undergraduate. So one of the things that we've had for a long time is a program called Team Mentoring Program, where we work with multicultural students, first-generation students, to mentor them and have a bunch of different activities. And they have a student mentor, they have industrial partnerships, they are across many STEM fields, as you can see here, arts and sciences, agriculture, human and natural resources, vet med, and engineering and architecture. And our students have a chance to go. They go on field trips. They have different seminars and their tracking programs, but it's a way to help students who may have a higher potential of not being successful, to help them along the way in doing this. And this program has been going since 2007, and one of the things that we see that 80% of the participants stay and graduated, and 66% stayed in a STEM field, which is much higher than a cohort that did not have these programs. They also do research projects and look at graduate education, study abroad, and this program actually won the Presidential Award for Excellence in Science, Mathematics, and Engineering Mentoring in 2018. So a great program to get students through to make sure they're successful. We also, undergraduate research is a great opportunity for our students to get involved and to see the application. Someone mentioned earlier, the application, today's generation wants to know, why do I have to learn this math, right? Because at least when I went to school, we learned the equations first and the applications last, if we were lucky. These students are like, they want the applications right away. So here's a program that we are working where there's some hands-on, low-cost opportunities to learn about transport phenomena or chemical engineering concepts. So you can visualize it, because particularly women and multicultural students, visualization is an important part. So being able to visualize hands-on experiences tend to help in the learning process, as been documented through different research. So having these different low costs enable people to learn more about it. And this program is a national program that WSU is part of that's trying to disseminate all sorts of data and information related to these experiments so students can experience it hands-on perspective. Okay, so graduate programs, research and innovation. I could give a 45-minute talk on this. I'm not going to. You're going to hear some more this afternoon about some different research in those areas. But I do want to talk about a little bit more about communicating STEM to non-STEM audiences. We have a program called Ask Dr. Universe, where middle schoolers and elementary school kids can ask a question: do bees sleep? Different questions, and our reporter goes to the different faculty and then shares an article on that and explains the concepts in a way that an elementary school person can understand it. And it's a great example of communicating STEM. And it's something we're working across our WSU system. We have the Edward R. Murrow College of Communication, an internationally known college of communication. So how do we combine that with our STEM to create, and we're creating a certificate to help people know how to communicate to someone that's a non-technical, non-STEM person, the significance about what we're doing. And this is a really important aspect of what we do. Then we've got PNNL, which is a great partner. And as we look at PNNL, we're talking about 4,500, this is from the website, so hopefully the most recent. We have almost 4,500 scientists, engineers, and professional staff in the state of Washington. What a great resource for us to make sure we're working with. We also have a budget, they have almost $1 billion budget of things we can work together on, and WSU is working, but this is where I really talk about more trying to get the undergraduate and master's and PhD level. At a meeting yesterday with a computer scientist from PNNL, and he was talking about making sure we get enough people that can have security clearances to do cybersecurity work that's needed, because right now we don't have students getting their master's and PhD that can get those security clearances. So my last couple slides, so food, energy, and water nexus. So one of the things when we talk about this is particularly important in the state of Washington, right? We have over 300 different commodities that we produce in the state of Washington. And I put our Cosmic Crisp here, as well as cherries, particularly for this region. And then our hydro aspect, which our hydro is a great example of energy and water and working together. So let's talk a little bit about food, all right? If you think this is the original Cosmic Crisp tree, there was a ceremony this week for that tree, but I thought it's a great example. You look at a tree, but that tree, look at all the different areas that are part of that tree, right? We have soil science, we have plant pathology, we have crop science, we have entomology. What kind of bugs do we have? Good bugs and bad bugs, right? We have education. We have health sciences, making sure nutrition, making sure our food, how we process it. Food science, right? We can make those apples into cider. I'm a cider person. Or we can make grains into beer. We can make grapes into wine. So a lot of those kind of things. Agricultural engineering. How do we use robotics or UAVs for our agriculture? Economics. Can't do it without money. Data science, understanding what's there. Chemistry, what kind of things do we use to kill weeds? Biology, biotech. Did I miss anything? I mean, just think about that one tree, what that presents and what happens in that. So, vet med with our food sources. Then let's talk about water and engineering. Water and energy, sorry. Engineering, right, when we talk about hydro, we talk about, I just put engineering because it's all engineering, civil engineering, mechanical engineering, materials, electrical engineering, all different forms, computer science. We're talking about renewables, material science. How do we create solar cells? Social sciences. How do we get people to accept? How do people feel about hydro? We know there are political challenges around hydro, and how do different people think different things? How do we deal with that? Water is such an important resource, right? How do we deal with water as we're balancing between a data center that needs water related to cooling, and we have agriculture that needs water? How do we work in all those different areas? The physics. And then this picture is me in India, and these are the ladies of a village that we're going to electrify as part of my project. And it's really cool to talk to a group of women who haven't had electricity and ask them about that opportunity. And for them, it's about education for their kids and being able to learn from that. So a lot happening, and so I really think STEM, I had to have one equation in here because I'm an engineering professor. So STEM plus Washington equals a great future. So I think we have a lot of opportunities. You all are doing a lot of great things, and we want to continue to use those partnerships across universities, across our colleges, and our public-private. And I know we're probably running a little behind, so maybe we can take a couple questions. Yeah. So thanks for the opportunity. And there's my email if you have questions or would like to further discussion. Yes. Yes, you.
Hi, thank you so much for your presentation. I had a quick question. I'm doing some work with India as well, and one of the things that I've seen is that they're having more graduates in areas. There's been some discussion with my friends in India about the quality of that instruction and the quality of that teacher. So they're really concerned about the outcomes of those programs, not so much at the IIT station that you guys are working at, but in other programs in India. What are you seeing, I guess, from your experience, those graduates?
Yeah, they are. India has a bunch of recently opened schools. Actually, they went from like 7 or 8 IITs. Now they're like 27 because they're trying to do one in every region so that there's access to an IIT. So there's different levels of academic achievement in those different areas. They are, obviously the GRE helps us have a common, but we are seeing some of the students are taking some classes to make sure. Part of it is also the cultural differences between what software. Sometimes they, particularly in engineering, they don't have some of the labs and they do a lot of theoretical work. They don't do as much of the hands-on experience. So in engineering, we have to go through some of those. So there are some challenges related to that, and we're working, and obviously the U.S. Department of Education talks about the different levels. A lot of universities now internationally are getting accredited by ABET, which is our engineering technology accreditation. So they're trying to have some of those commonalities related to that. We are seeing less international students nationally coming in for graduate education because of some of the issues with visas and some of that. We're seeing them go to Canada and Europe instead of the U.S. So WSU has been fortunate. We haven't had a huge change, but several other universities have had thousands of students drop because we're not seeing some of those people. And some of it is because they're going to more colleges locally, and others are just because of the visa status.
Thank you. Great job. Nice to see you again, too. Thank you very much. Good. All the presentations will be posted later as well. All the PowerPoints, everything, including all the handouts. So thank you for making that point. Let's take a 15-minute break and come back, and we'll move into the next part, okay? And the coffee and goodies are right outside the door to your left. Oh, yeah, thanks. Hey, you.